Hi, this is Sheriff Gary McFadden of the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office, bringing you MCSO News 45. And today is October, which we always remember as DV, Domestic Violence Month. And so today I have a guest, Mrs. Hairston, and she's going to ask me a bunch of questions about DV because it is very near and dear to my heart. Most people know that this is a big part of my career when I was a homicide detective to investigate homicides, but DV related. And I can tell you that I lost several college classmates to domestic violence, homicides, and I'm going to always be a big advocate to fight this disease of domestic violence. So today I have Mrs. Hairston, and she's going to talk to us about domestic violence.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
I started this journey with advocacy for domestic violence. In 2009, my grandmother was killed by her son. Her name was Annie Heath. And we later found out that there was some physical things that transpired over the years, which the result ended in a fatality. And then we, skipped a little down further the years. In 2016, my only sister, Daphne Ellis, she was killed by her son's father at her job. And there's record on file, restraining orders, where that was an ongoing thing with them. And the result ended in a fatality. So I started to become a part of Mothers of Murdered Offspring, just to kind of give back to the community, and it also as a way to just kind of grieve for myself. But I started to get a lot of individuals, male and female, that just needed a way out, or needed to talk, or needed to vent, or needed to just expose or feel some sort of freedom of what they could do to get out of their domestic violence situations. So I've just been getting out as much literature as possible, all the different forms of domestic violence where people don't even realize that they're experiencing domestic violence. I also do a photo shoot where myself and some other individuals, we paint our faces to where it looks like we've been physically assaulted, because sometimes people need to see the physical aspect of it. And then I have, for the whole month, women will send me pictures of them in purple lipstick, as I'm wearing today, just as a form of support against domestic violence. And men will send me pictures with them wearing purple shirts to support domestic violence. And I post those every day for the whole month of October. So this interview is also just like one of the highlights of just to keep getting as much information out amongst the community for domestic violence.
Well, that's ironic because I just left Texas at a sheriff summit.
Wow.
And the last hour of the summit was about domestic violence. And so the National Sheriff Association is going to create a foundation called Man Up. And the color is purple. And so they're just beginning it. But they're asking all the sheriffs, all 3,081 of us, to get involved with this, because domestic violence is in every city, in every county, in every community. So they asked us to get involved. So the color purple will be widely used. But you want to ask me some questions?
I do. So my very first question is, what is domestic violence to you?
The abuse towards your spouse, your intimate partner. That's what it is. When they can't live a normal life, they can't feel safe in their home. They get upset when the phone rings or dinner is late. There's so many different things. And the reason I'm saying that, because when I'm talking to a homicide suspect and they're trying to convince me why they did this, and it has domestic violence taint to it, I want to know why. And some of the most ridiculous things, she knows I work hard. And she knows when I come home, I don't want the house dirty and clean. I want it clean. And then a fight starts, and then they take someone's life. I just emailed the sheriff last night where a 15-year-old in the state of Washington killed his mother, father, and his siblings.
My God.
And so that is domestic violence
Yes.
also.
Yes.
So most people think domestic violence is always a woman receiving the assault, men receive the assault,
Absolutely.
the children receive the assault,
Absolutely.
and also it's not always physical. It is the beginning of tearing you down and believing that nobody else wants you, love you, or care about you, and this is the reason most people stay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. What experiences have you had with domestic violence?
As a homicide detective, probably 200 homicides. I couldn't tell you how many assaults, violent assaults, shootings, stabbings, beatings that I've did in my 30-some years with CMPD. I mean, you go to calls and it's domestic. She has a black eye, a broken arm. The kids are involved. So for me, it's about a 30-year stint of dealing with domestic violence. And I've had issues of childhood friends lost their lives. One young lady named Cheryl, I'll never forget her. She was my college classmate. I had a family member, not a close family member, but only found out there was a family member after I worked the homicide, and the family showed up to a family reunion. And I asked them, why are y'all here? And they were like, why are you here? I said, this is my family. And we became very good friends after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, why do you feel victims stay or return to their abuse?
Because the abuser takes away all of their self-esteem. They take away every bit of it. They make them feel like nobody wants you, so why would you leave? And they take away all of your self-esteem, and then you believe that nobody wants you, and this is why I stay. And I stay because I want to be loved or I want to be cared for, and they stay, and they have no way out. Financially, most of the time, it's a financial burden. If you move out, what do I have? Or I take everything away, so go. And then the people who say that they're going to support them don't really support them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there are warning signs?
There's always warning signs. There's warning signs, and then your family members talk you out of those warning signs. They say stay, or it's not that bad. Well, you know, me and your father had these problems, or me and your mother had these problems, and you took a vow and stay, and then at the end, sometimes they lose their lives, and we never hear about that until it's time. And I'm speaking from my past experience as a homicide detective. Then you hear about it. All these things. Then you look at the reports, and then you look at the hospital admissions. You didn't fall down the stairs that many times.
Yeah.
And so they stay because they have no way out. They believe there is no way that they say they can live their life. You know, they have to leave their job or leave the city. And do you have the means to move on? And most of them don't.
Do you feel like the abusers have the ability to change?
I believe that they do. I think that what we don't do well is, and we're going to start programs with inside of our detention center, because we don't say jail here, is we're going to focus on the abuser. Because what happens is you move on and they move on, and then you find someone who will love you and take care of you, but there is no alarm bell on that's an abuser. I hate to say this, and people may say we can't go that far. When you are a sex offender, you are a registered sex offender. Not to say that you should be a registered abuser for life, but be a registered abuser. So then when you look up like, okay, yeah, you have 4 or 5 assaults and you beat someone, I probably don't need to date you.
Yes.
Or you on a record. I know that may be a little bit far, but I think it'll save some lives.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. What do you feel causes domestic violence? And when I say that, do you feel like it is based off of your environment? Do you feel like it's based off of your home of origin, meaning the way you were raised?
All of that. It happens in the home. You see it. It's normal. I remember working a family member's homicide, and the mother has been abused for years. And the family knew it, but they, kind of hide it from everybody. So the day that we found her, it took us a while to determine that she was abused by her husband and was killed by her husband. But I'll never forget, while I was talking to the family in the living room at that time, to the two sons and the wives, which is the daughter-in-laws of the victim, one daughter-in-law in the middle of my conversation just jumped up and ran out of the room. And she went outside, and the husband looked around, and then he went outside. And I'll never forget, when I was coming down the steps, she says, the person he is talking about is you. You are just like your father. The person that they're talking about is you. And they got a divorce. And I haven't seen her recently, but at that time, she said, at that point, she realized that if she stayed, she would end up like her mother-in-law, and they would all have hidden this fact all these years. And she left at that time.
Do you feel like what is the worst form of domestic violence and it takes the longest to heal from?
The physical is terrible. Let me get that right. The physical is terrible. But when you rip somebody's self-esteem out, character, and everything, that is, I wouldn't say it's the worst, but it is the hardest to recover. Because all your life you've been told that you're not worth nothing. Nobody wants you. You look at you. You're ugly. You're fat. You're this and that, and it's every single day. So you believe that even when you look in the mirror, you are beautiful. But it is hard to come back from that. I think the physical part is hard too. But if you keep your self-esteem up, and all, you can make it. But when you just constantly look at you, I'm not going to take you nowhere. You're not going with me. Look at how you're dressed. And then look at her. She's beautiful. But look at you. And then you hold your head down. I hate to say it, but The Color Purple is a perfect example of that. The part that Whoopi played, and you're doing this and you're scared and you're looking around, that is hard to come out of.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Because when you come back out into the light and people look at you, you just assume that, oh, I'm ugly or I don't look good. And that's hard to come back from.
Do you feel that there are more men affected by domestic violence than women?
I think that a lot of men are. They are affected by it because they saw it as a child. They see their father beat their mother or their mother beat their father and nothing is said. And they grow up with this hidden hurt feeling, or they grow up with this is the way of life. And they don't say anything about it. And then until they are in jail or even commit one of these crimes, and then they want to talk about it but they hide it for 30 or 40 years. And that's tough.
So that was my follow-up question. Why don't you feel like men report their violence?
Well, it's the same thing why we don't hug our sons and we don't kiss our sons and we don't show affection. You're hard. You got to be hard all the time. You got to be tough. You can't say, man, look, man, I'm going through a lot with my wife. She yells at me and she pushes me around, and we all have that. Actually, I have a female who committed a murder against her boyfriend. And I always remember that because she even showed up to the hospital and she claimed that something else happened to him. And we charged her and arrested her for that. But looking at their history, the reason that he liked to talk to other women because his wife was just always beating on him, knocking on him. So when he's in the neighborhood, he wants to be a ladies' man. And she confronted him and stabbed him, and he ran out the house. And we thought he got hit by a car.
My goodness.
But and it's sad, when we got to the hospital, the doctor said, unless a knife is attached to that bumper, this is a homicide.
Wow.
And so never forget that one.
I constantly am looking at social media about on these Charlotte mugshot. And I see that there is an increasingly amount of men, some women, being arrested for domestic violence. Why do you feel like there is an increase here in Charlotte?
Well, I think that now, believe it or not, when we were going through COVID, that was a tough time.
Yes.
With the sheriff's office, our divorce rate and serving papers to have people removed from their home went up.
Mm.
Because, and I kind of explained it to someone, when you are married and you are in high profile jobs, after work, somebody's going to play golf and somebody's going to have some drinks. And so when you're at home, you may have 3 hours before you go to bed. So you really don't have that connectivity, contact with your spouse. And then all of a sudden you all are pushed into the home together during COVID. You have no outlet. And then you find out your children are not who you believe that they are. And then you get into this argument and then it starts. And then now the economy also affects us. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't have a job, and then, well, why you keep asking me about a job? I'm doing the best that I can, and you blame them for your shortcomings, and then it becomes physical.
Do you believe that there is one particular form of domestic violence that is harder to prove than the other?
The verbal.
Okay.
The verbal is hard to prove. The professional who has a great career and wears the mask every day to work, and the spouse wears that mask in public. I have that friend. Wonderful job. Both are 6 figures. Children not quite going to Ivy League school, but almost. Fabulous home. Not physical domestic violence, but verbal domestic violence. And then if you ask any of their friends, perfect. If they walk up to us right now and you see both of their children are in college, unbelievable students, dean's list. You look at her. She has someone to clean the house. I never forget when we were talking one time, and the resolve of how he treated her that day was a car. He had the ability to buy her a Mercedes-Benz sports utility vehicle.
Wow.
But the sad part, she came out of a domestic violence marriage and a physical domestic violence marriage and walk into a verbal domestic violence marriage. So the physical part had stopped, but now they're into a verbal. And if you see them in public, absolutely never would detect it. And it's hard because the families and everybody else, now the close friends and a few of us know, because we've known this person since childhood. And so we know that. We see the difference. And the 1 or 2 close friends still talk to her, but oh no, it's nothing. You know, y'all got it wrong. And then he pulls her back in away from all of us. And then, as we call it, groom her back in. And then all of a sudden it's still there. So sometimes we know and sometimes we don't. And then the friends get exhausted of asking to come out of it. And then they have to leave it alone because our spouse says, you just need to leave that alone because that person is never going to leave. And sometimes we do.
Do you feel like there is a huge impact and difference in a female batter than a male batter?
I think it's the female will tell more about what really happened, how it happened, and how long it's happened. A male would probably be reluctant because, as we use the word, the boys will say, man, so this is what was happening to you. So they may not give all the details as vivid as a woman, I would think. The ones that I've known, I've never heard the detail after detail after detail. They give you the surface details, but never the childhood details or how they were growing up and what happened when they were young kids and what maybe contributed to their lifestyle.
And we spoke on the different factors of the cost of living, COVID, things that have stressors that have caused, all that affect all of us. Do you feel like there's no outlet, meaning the mental health part of it? It's hard to get a appointment with a therapist. It is hard to afford affordable insurance, to have a suitable copay. There are some people that cannot afford to go to a therapist. So do you think that that plays a huge part in?
Absolutely. There is no facility that you should be able to take a battered citizen to, take them to a one-stop shop. They're trying to build these family centers, but a one-stop shop. I need services on the first floor, and you live on the second floor. And you come down from the second floor to receive the services, if I had to build it. And we take you there at no cost. And for 90 days or 120 days, you can live upstairs. And then while you're living upstairs, you come down to door A, and we try to find you housing and employment. You come to this section, and then we're talking about your mental health. And then you go here for just reconnecting with your family. So all these wraparound services, and we talk about the word wraparound services, and we're talking about all these things, but that would be my ideal place. If I find you as a law enforcement officer in a situation where you are being battered, we could take you to this facility, and then we're going to take you back to collect your things, and then we're going to have services there to put you back on your feet, mentally and financially, and even spiritually. And then when you believe that you have reached that point, or we said that you can reach that point, you'll be able to find housing. That would be the step up, and that would be the part that I could create. And here's the sad part: we can create that. We have the funding. We don't, but the American citizens, the athletes, the churches, and everybody has the funding. If you want to put your funding toward domestic violence, create something like that. So we can take you straight there. And if you have clothing, of course, bring a few things to make it through 3 or 4 days until you have to go back. But there should be a closet. And you just walk in, and we give you the services, and you go upstairs to your place, and you come down for dinner, and you meet women or men who all have the same problems.
My last two questions are, the first one is, do you feel like we're in this society and this day and age now where everybody says, that's none of my business?
Yes.
How do we change that to get into people's business?
We have to have these conversations with the people who family members may have lost their lives, that someone else could have made that phone call. We have to have the tough conversations. I can't tell you how many funerals I've attended, and we hear, that's my friend. And then when we get to the house, we hear all about the childhood friend, and me and her went here, or me and him went here, and me and him had this great time. Well, we'll still be that person. I can tell you that me and my first grade class have that relationship, and we had to remove one of our friends from a verbal, and I'll never forget when I was having a conversation with her, and I said, now I'm going to ask you some questions that I'm going to have to ask you. Is he forcing himself on you, or if he's touching you? And the comment that she told me after that, I said, then why are you staying? Oh my God. If it's no love and no sexual attraction and no, sorry for the word, sexual activities, and he's not touching you, why are you staying? And I said, girl, we know you. And so I call what we call my brothers and the sisters, and I call everybody up. I'll never forget it. And I said, this is what so-and-so is going through. I'm going to, at that time it was Nations Bank, or Bank of, I think it was still Nations Bank. And I said, I'm going to open an account. And I called everybody, and I said, here's the account number. I didn't tell anybody what to put in that account. I said, I'm going to the bank. And the lady at the bank says, now you're going to put this in somebody else's name? I said, yes, ma'am. I'm going to put this money in the account, and I want to open up an account for her. And we put money in the account. And we moved her from where she was. She got a job in South Carolina in corrections. And she retired. And she's living a wonderful life. And we always laugh about it. And we kind of joke about it, because when the brothers went to get her. I didn't go. I just said, I'm going to stay away from that part of it. And I sent the other knuckleheads, and they went and brought her back. And we moved her from one city to South Carolina. And we're the happiest ever been. And that group of brothers and sisters are going to meet this coming weekend for a reunion. And so I think if we really honestly take care of each other, we'll be fine.
Last but not least, we know that the worst case or the worst result of domestic violence is a fatality. What type of signs or resources that you know of that can be put out more for individuals to not get to that fatality?
We have to have the conversation. We have to get involved. I'm not saying go to someone's house and stand between them, but let somebody know what is going on. Let everybody that you believe that who's going to be that friend, who, I hate to say it, potentially attend that funeral, to say, we're not going to the funeral, and I need your help. And get everybody involved, because what the abuser does is to put you on an island. But if you start alerting everybody and making everybody aware of it, I think would be less. But alcohol plays a part, drugs plays a part, and firearms play a part. And they may have brandished it in your face before or say something. I'm hoping that the victim confides in someone to talk about it before we get to that part. But I think conversation with your friends to say what's really going on. Try to help them, not just gossip on the phone. Try to help them. Document what you're doing. Tell somebody. And I think that could slow it down some. But it's hard because they live in a silent world of domestic violence. But
That's so true.
I'm always going to be an advocate. I've lost too many friends, and I think about a couple of friends that one young lady here in Charlotte. I was leaving for vacation, and I'll never forget. And I said, our birthdays are 2 days apart. Mine is January 1st, hers is January 3rd. And I'll never forget. I talked to her that weekend, just before that weekend, before leaving the city. And I said, you can be all right. She did everything. She got the restraining order. She went to court. She did everything that you can imagine to be right. And she was on the bus. He found out where she was, got on the city bus, took her life, got off the bus, and took his life. And I knew nothing about it, so I got back from being out of town, and I picked up the newspaper. I'll never forget it. I was just going through the mail, and then that's when you got newspapers at your house. And I opened the Sunday paper, and it was all in the Sunday paper about the homicide. But like I said, as a homicide detective, I worked dozens of them, and I'm still going to be an advocate for those who can't speak for themselves.
Well, I thank you so much for your time and sharing your experiences and just even some of your ideas of what we can do to push forward to prevent domestic violence. I just, I can't say it or emphasize it enough. If you know something, say something. If you see something, say something. Let's get involved in each other's lives. Let's ask these uncomfortable questions. Ladies, men, parents, I cannot emphasize it enough that we need to communicate with one another to prevent this disease
We do.
Of domestic violence, because it is rapidly increasing and due to all different types of stresses. But I still just don't believe that there's anything that justifies.
None of it does. None of it's justified. You can't justify domestic violence. That's it. You can't tell me you can justify what you're doing to someone else. You can't. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for tuning in to Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office, MCSO News 45.